Okay, so continuing on after we looked at special considerations, we also have looking at what kind of installation we want to do. Okay, there's a couple different types that are out there. Okay, if the hard drive is new, you have no choice. You have to do that clean install, which means you're starting from scratch anyways. You won't have anything to boot up to if you try to put it in your hard drive and go. So if the OS is already present, then you basically have three different options. You have that clean install, which means it's going to wipe clean anything else that's on the drive and reinstall the OS. Okay, with this you lose everything, including system files, user data, anything like that. Okay, the advantage to this is that you're getting rid of any type of virus or malware or any ghost issues you might have, which can definitely be a great advantage. The downside to this is you do lose all your data, plus it's generally a little bit longer install. I mean, even that being the case, it's not that long. We're talking about less than an hour to do an install. Okay, then you also have an in-place upgrade where basically you're jumping from, let's say, Windows 7 to Windows 8. It's going to essentially keep all your data where it's at. It's going to take your system files and settings within Windows and upgrade them to the new version. Okay, so this is by far the quickest method. The problem with this one is anything that's already in place, meaning any type of viruses or malware that may be in place, gets upgraded right in with it. Okay, so if you talk to any type of administrators or technicians, they'll tell you that when it comes to installing operating systems on lab machines or on servers, majority of them don't even think twice. They go with a clean install, just because what they've found is it may take a little bit longer time, but in the long run, starting from a clean slate is so much easier than having to deal with any existing issues, because generally with these upgrades, not only do the problems come with you, a lot of times they end up being amplified. So those little ghost issues that you may have come across in Windows 7, those little gremlins, they've been called, have now just been amplified and made even worse in Windows 8. So upgrades a lot of times are not used out in the world too often. You also have multi-boot, which we kind of talked about, where you can actually use multiple partitions and install different operating systems or different versions of operating systems as well. Okay, so excuse me. As far as upgrades are concerned, here's a list of what you can upgrade from and to. So you can see Starter, Home Basic, and Home Premium. You can upgrade to 8.1. Starter, Home Basic, Home Premium, Professional, and Ultimate. You can go to Pro, Professional, and Enterprise. You can go to Enterprise, so on and so forth. One thing you'll notice here, and the general theme, is that you can always upgrade to to a version better, but you can never downgrade, meaning that you can't go from Windows 7 Professional to Windows 8.1, okay, or something like that. You have to go to an equivalent version or higher when you're upgrading. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, some other things to keep in mind. 64-bit version can only be upgraded to another 64-bit version. Okay, 32-bit can only be upgraded to a 32-bit version. Okay, you cannot move from a 32-bit to 64-bit or vice versa. Okay, you have to go through and do a complete clean install to jump from one version to another, because it communicates with the hardware and the computer completely differently. Okay, you cannot upgrade from XP or Vista to Windows 8, and you cannot upgrade from XP to 7. Okay, you have to perform a clean install on these as well. So generally speaking, and just from personal experience, a clean install is really going to be where you want to go anyways. It's going to make your life a whole lot easier in the long run, I guarantee you. Okay, so looking at some of the choices you'll have to make during the installation. Okay, one is partitions. If you decide to do partitions, you need to decide how big you want these certain partitions. If you have a 1 terabyte drive, then do you want to make a C drive and a D drive? Okay, or do you want to make a Windows partition and a Linux partition? Okay, once you decide that, you really need to decide how much size you need. Okay, if you're doing Windows and Linux, Linux doesn't need nearly the space that Windows does. So you might do, with a 1 terabyte drive, you might do 750 gigs for Windows, 250 gigs for Linux. Okay, that's more than enough for Linux, something like that. Okay, if you want to do a C and a D drive, you may do 250 gigs for your C drive and then 750 gigs for your D drive. That way you get a little more space for your personal data. So it's just up to you, but just make sure you determine how you want your partitions laid out. Okay, then your network configuration. Okay, what kind of network are you plugging into? Are you going to be joining a domain? You going to be doing a work group, a home group? How is your network information going to be supplied to you? For instance, are you going to be getting your information through a DHCP server or get it dynamically? Or are you going to be getting it statically where you have to have all the pertinent information, the IP address, the default gateway, the subnet mask, all that kind of stuff. So you need to know this going into the installation so you know how to actually configure the network and get it set up to work properly. Okay, and it's always a great idea to go ahead and create a checklist before doing the installation. Okay, and it's really a great idea to have a checklist for before and a checklist after. Okay, so first off, this is a pretty good example of a checklist for looking at before installation. Okay, 1, does the computer meet the minimum or recommended hardware requirements? Okay, nowadays, we kind of looked at the minimum requirements, and basically, if you're buying a new computer, shouldn't have any problem meeting those minimum requirements. Really, what this is referring to is when Aunt Ida gives you her PC from the 80s, and you want to see if it'll run Windows 8. Okay, then you can actually go through and look and see, well, it might barely meet the minimum requirements, but no, I better not do this. In that case, that 80s computer may be better for like a Linux distribution or something. Okay, next one, do you have in hand the Windows device drivers? Okay, if not, I would recommend going to the manufacturer's website and downloading those device drivers beforehand. Okay, the really important one to get is going to be your display and your network. If you can get your network driver, then you can really use your network access to download everything else. Okay, do you have a product key for Windows so that you can activate it? Okay, do you know how your network's going to be organized? Okay, the domain name or anything like that. How will the computer be recognized on the network? Meaning, are you going to get a dynamic IP address or static? Will you do an upgrade or clean install? For clean install, you're going to do a dual boot. Are you going to do any partitions or anything like that? And then, big one, really big one, have you backed up any important data on the drive? Okay, if so, where is it at? Do you have access to it? Okay, because I can tell you real quick, nothing will make a customer more ticked off at you than losing little Susie's pictures from when she was a baby or something like that. If you lose information like that, they're going to be irate, and trust me, your boss will find out. Okay, so make sure you back up that important data. Okay, and last but not least for this little part of Chapter 8, you want to make sure that you have all the application software that you need. That you have access to that, whether it's being downloaded or a disk or whatever the case may be. We mentioned backing up. If you're not reformatting the drive, if you're doing an upgrade, it's a very good idea to run antivirus and anti-spyware beforehand. Make sure that there's nothing present, and then a lot of times you'll have to turn that antivirus off to be able to do the upgrade. Because we have like that, just like the UEFI, it has that protective boot, that secure boot. And if you have that enabled, it won't allow you to do an upgrade. Okay, so you've got to actually turn that off in order to do that. Okay, so then you can go through and make sure your boot sequence is set up correctly. You're booting from a DVD, from a removable drive, from a network location, all that kind of stuff. For laptops, you got to make sure your AC power is plugged in. Okay, make sure you're plugged into the wall, because you do not want to be running off a battery, get halfway through installation, your battery dies, because then you're just kind of stuck. Okay, so this is the preparation part of doing the installation. So the next part we'll be actually looking at installing Windows.